Am I allowed to judge you? You allowed to judge me? Let's look at that. I'm Zach. This is The Average Christian, a project about exploring a real relationship with God by looking at truth, practicality, how do we make this work in an everyday setting, and dispelling myths about Christianity. I'm glad you're a part of this, and this video is about judging. Am I allowed to? When am I allowed to? And the answer is yes and no. And so I want to point that out. And this may come across in sort of a hodgepodge, but at least two major emphases here. It's a big word for me, but two major points to look at. And the first, looking at that judgment that we're not allowed to do. And we do it sometimes. We misjudge people. We feel like it's our right or it's our job to be the police. I know church people struggle with this a lot. We feel like we're supposed to be the enforcers and the judges. And with every other sin that I can imagine, it's a matter of playing God when you judge somebody else. Now, I do this project with Clayton. And Clayton's the behind the scenes guys, and you've seen him on the Gravy podcast. We've done a couple of those. First time I ever met Clayton, comes to church, and I don't know the guy, and he's there with some other people. And so I walk out, and I'm with a bunch of people that I'm really comfortable around, and I'm a young, stupid teenage guy. And I walk out, and I see this, what was that, a Toyota or something, Nissan? Yeah, okay, it's a Toyota. So I walk out, and this Toyota has a massive back glass. And Calvin and Hobbes was big back then. If you don't know about it, look up the old comic strips back when newspapers actually mattered. And Calvin was all over everything. Well, he's got a thing or a decal of Calvin on the back of this car with this massive earth and this stream of pee, which is like pee on the world. That's probably the nice way to say it. Well, I was like, well, who drove to church in the big car with the nasty sticker on it, and just started popping off. Don't know. Clayton ain't a Christian. And he just kind of said, that's my car. And it was like, man, here I am judging somebody just based on their car, and you feel absolutely awful. You've done it too, though, right? Where maybe not stuck your foot that far down your throat, but you've judged somebody and thought you knew somebody and just sat back and evaluated like that. Look, that's the wrong kind. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 1 illustrates that. I've got the Bible in front of me, but I actually want to look it up here in the ESV. I don't have that version in this paper Bible in front of me. So let me get to Matthew chapter 7. This is probably one of the most popular, but it also gets taken out of context in the Bible. He literally means don't judge here. Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use it, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that's in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when there is a log in your own eye? And he goes on to say a few more things there. Let me define this for you. Okay, let's get terms. What does he mean by judge there? To separate, to pick out, to choose, to approve, to esteem or prefer, to be of opinion, to determine or resolve, to pronounce an opinion concerning right or wrong, to pronounce judgment, to rule or govern, which is not my job, not your job either, to preside over with the power of giving judicial decisions. And there's a lot of other verses that come in here that tells me that this kind of judgment belongs to God, not me. So in the no aspect of this, if I'm asking, am I allowed to judge you, vice versa? The answer is no. Like this, not at all. And I'll help as we go toward the end of the video, help you hopefully see the distinction between the two. Matthew 5:40, anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. Matthew 19 and verse 28, Jesus said to them, truly I say to you, in the new world, when the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. How about, and these are just verses talking about the authority of God in a lot of various ways. Luke 12 and verse 57, why do you not judge for yourselves what is right? Luke 6:37, judge not and you will not be judged. Condemn not and you will not be condemned. See, that's a distinction too, is I'm going to condemn. Now look, there's right and wrong. And we always say things like to make ourselves feel better about judgment. We say, well, you hate the sin and not the sinner. But really what we're doing is going around condemning people and you're wrong. And we say, some of us say, and I haven't heard this in a long time, I'm thankful, but some of us will tell other people, you're going to hell for blah, 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 blah. Never, look at me, look really close, bring in the camera here. Never, ever, ever say you're going to hell or this person's going to hell. You don't get to judge like that. And that's what he's talking about in condemning people here. There's lots of other passages that illustrate this as well. John 8:15 and 16, you judge according to the flesh. And Jesus says, I judge no one. There's plenty of the verses like that where it talks about I was not sent to condemn the world, like John 3 and verse 17. Jesus wasn't sent to condemn or to judge. And I heard this recently and even posted it recently. So God didn't send Jesus to judge or to condemn, so he sent you instead. Talking about John 8, judge according to the flesh, we judge what we see. It's God that could look at David in 2 Samuel, 1 Samuel 16, and see what everybody else left out because he didn't look like the type of guy that would be a king. And this is the one God said would be chosen, and God judges by the heart, not by the appearances like we do. James 2, chapter 10, Romans 14, if you're taking notes for later on, Romans 14 is a good one as well. In James chapter 4, do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. Because why? You become the lawmaker. You become the one who makes the law, who keeps the law, who enforces the law, who condemns those who don't follow it. In effect, you make yourself out to be God, and we are not allowed this kind of judgment. Now, Jesus throws in a monkey wrench, because if you just leave it like that, you say, well, nobody can judge me. And a lot of people do that too. You get kind of whiny about it and say, well, you can't judge me because I'm blah, 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 blah. No, it's not really exactly right. There, I said there was a yes and a no answer to this question. Can I judge you? Can you judge me? The point is, what's the reasoning behind it? The why? Okay, so Jesus says, you hear people say, well, we're only allowed righteous judgment. But then they don't let the Bible define what righteous judgment is. They let themselves do it or some other people, and then so that gives them a little more freedom and a little less anxiety and about trashing somebody else. Essentially, that's really why we do. There's a lot of reasons why we do it, but it's in order to trash somebody else to make us feel better about ourselves, and on we could go. But enough with the psychology of it. Jesus says in John 7:24, do not judge by appearances. All right, don't judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. Well, what does it mean to be righteous? To observe divine laws in a wide sense. This is kind of what Jesus said. It is what Jesus said in Matthew 7. Handle your business, all right? Make sure you're observing what the Lord wants and living according to his will. In a wider sense, it's upright and righteous and virtuous and keeping with the commands of God, innocent, faultless, and guiltless. Only Christ truly in that sense of righteousness, but we're made righteous through Jesus, and it's approved of or acceptable of God. So he says, I want you to use that kind of judgment, the judgment that's acceptable to God. So I think the way to illustrate this, or the way to define this so you and I can understand it, is let's illustrate it from the Bible. There are times when I need to make judgments about you or about somebody else, but for good reason. In Matthew 7:17-20, so every healthy tree bears good fruit, but a diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, you will recognize them by their fruits. One guy said, I don't judge people, I'm just a fruit inspector. But I can look at the way you live and make some decisions. In fact, I have to make some decisions. And I'll try to get into these and not get ahead of myself here, but I've got to look at the way you live, not just the way you look or from these little snap judgments, these appearances. But if I see what you produce, that's really what he's talking about here, produce. What you produce, I can say, well, that's good or bad based on the Bible, not on me. or not what maybe this church or that church thinks, but what the Bible says, and move from there with a purpose. Remember, that's the difference between these two types of judgments is purpose and reasoning. 2 Corinthians 6. Now notice this, and this makes sense. In 2 Corinthians 6, 14 through 18, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. How you going to know? For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship is light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? What portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God, as God said. And this goes back to the idea of, again, looking at somebody who's not practicing righteousness and say we shouldn't be unequally yoked. We shouldn't be unequally bound or partnered up with people who are going to hurt us. Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 5 talks about a little leaven that leavens the whole lump. If I'm around other people that are that are going to influence me poorly, then that's going to affect who I am. It's 1 Corinthians 11 that says company, 1 Corinthians 15, that bad company corrupts good morals. So I have to protect my environment. That doesn't mean I need to be sheltered from the world. I got to be in the world, but not of the world. But I also have to protect my faith and choose who it is I plan to spend time around. I'm going to have fellowship and relationships with people who are of God. And I'm going to go out and have relationships with people in the world, but they're going to be different because one, I'm trying to influence, and another, I'm trying to feed off of, so to speak. And we're trying to build each other up and encourage each other. So I've got to look at people to say, okay, is this person good for me to be around, healthy for me to be around? And I tell my kids, the most dangerous thing in the world is who you're around. It's not drugs. It's not this. It's not all these other inanimate things. It's the people you're around. And this allows me for that judgment. 1 Corinthians 15:33, as I mentioned, do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 5, they looked at a guy who was living in sin, and a bunch of people in the church were like, oh no, they didn't say anything. They just let this dude who's sleeping with his stepmom, essentially, is what it looks like. They just let him keep going to church and keep being a part of them. And they were probably thinking, look how tolerant we are. We don't judge. We don't cast people out. We let them live their lives. Sound familiar? And Paul said, look, deliver him over to Satan for your benefit, because if he gets in there and that's allowed to go on, he can ruin the morals of everybody else, and for his benefit, because he's got to know this is a problem, this is wrong. He could lose his soul over this. So see, there's reasoning because you're trying to help somebody. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verses 1 and 2, saying is trustworthy if anyone aspires to the office of an overseer. He desires a noble task, therefore an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach. Elders are leaders in the church. If you're not familiar with that, you can read about the leadership that the Lord set up, but they have to be selected from amongst Christians. How are we going to do that unless we judge some people and say, yes, this is a good person to lead over the Lord's flock, to shepherd the Lord's flock, to be an elder? Got to make some judgments. You got to make judgments about who you marry, who you spend time with. The difference is this. Let me wind this up or bring this together like this. So let's bring this all together, all right? Because Jesus said what looks like contradictory statements. Matthew 7 and verse 1, judge not, do not judge, so that you're not judged. The same way you judge other people, that same measure is going to be used against you in judgment. Same Lord, same Jesus says in John chapter 7 and verse 24, do not judge according to appearances, but do judge with right judgment. So how does all this stuff come together? Because the answer is, can I judge you? The answer to that is yes and no. On the no side of it, I can't judge you to just sit back and condemn you, to put you down, to look at how wrong you are, to act like the Pharisee, the tax collector, and look how great I am and look how terrible he is and so forth, because it doesn't seek to do anything but to play a God, because not even the God acts like that. But right judgment seeks to do something. See, that's the time, that's how you differentiate between the two. One type of judgment is just for the sake of doing it, and we have no business doing that ever. And it's the opposite of mercy. The other type of judgment, this righteous judgment, seeks the benefit of the other person. Look, if I see you, if I really care about you and I see that you're doing wrong, that you're going down the wrong path by your fruit, if you will, by what you're producing in your life, that gives me a chance to pause and say, let me help you. Let me reach out to you and see what I can do for you. That's very different from standing back with my arms folded going, can you believe this fool? And it's usually involving gossip. Can you believe this fool is doing this, that, and the other? One seeks to help, the other just seeks to judge. If you're picking somebody, choosing somebody to marry, you got to make judgment calls. If you're choosing your friends, you need to make judgment calls, but that's for a benefit, not just so you can slam somebody else, but because I want to protect my faith. I want to spend my life, the rest of my life, with somebody that's going to help me in this relationship with God. That sort of judgment, the righteous judgment, always seeks to do something about it, always seeks to help, to bring some resolution, some way, shape, or form. So anything other than that, if it's just that I'm going to let everybody else know how bad this person is, or I'm going to think that in my own brain, that judgment is off limits. You are not God, and God does not need your help in judgment whatsoever. Look, I hope this helps. I hope it's clarified. I'm sure that you probably have questions. It has not been exhaustive. It's just a general look, but that gives you some stuff to go home and study, to look at for yourself and see if this adds up. Maybe there's some other layers to it that I forgot about it. You can let me know about that. I hope that you'll subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you get involved with this channel, this effort. We're just trying to help people, as I mentioned earlier. And so please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can keep up with other releases. And if you have ideas of things, this is a hot topic. If you've got other ideas of subjects we can cover, passages, comment or let us know. You can find us on social media. You can find these podcasts, the audio versions of these videos and other podcasts on iTunes, on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. And I hope it helps you. I really do. That's what we're all about here. And look forward to seeing you next time.